Thank you. Talk about a hero's journey. It's sort of a ways you get to really appreciate you doing that.
Well, if I nod off, you'll understand.
Maybe. We'll see. Try not to. But yeah, we'll certainly understand. You've been the president for 33, 34, something like that. Most people don't know this about EDF, which has just celebrated its 50th anniversary. Its unofficial theme or motto used to be "Sue the Bastards."
True.
And boy, it's come a long way. And I just, you were there for as well. Had a conversation with Bob Langert, a fireside chat with him about his book and his journey in 20 plus or 30 plus years at McDonald's. And you played a central role in that and in bringing EDF to McDonald's, and in the process kind of created the bar that unfortunately is still kind of the bar, or at least up to fairly recently, for corporate NGO partnerships. Talk a little bit about, first of all, where you see the state of play and how things have evolved since then.
Well, first of all, it was great to get to see you in conversation with Bob. He's a great leader, and his book is a great read. I know you've read it, but it's just, I thought it was fantastic. An inside look at the transformation of McDonald's that he was centrally involved in. From our standpoint, you know, in the beginning, it was a little bit of a risk to partner with the company. It wasn't really done in the environmental community back in 1990 when we initiated that partnership. And we got a fair amount of criticism at the beginning. But one thing, Joel, is that for a long time now, those of us who care deeply about the environment, human health, the natural world, know that we need to get results. And when McDonald's transformed itself and did 100 things to reduce its waste and impact on the environment and energy consumption and antibiotic use, the environmental community saw that breaking bread with a supposed enemy could, in some situations, not every time, but where you had a motivated company, could get real results. And a lot of the animosity toward partnering with companies basically melted away.
But what did you see back then that none of the other environmental groups had seen?
Well, I don't know that I was the only one who's ever seen anything, Joel, but I will say this. I understood that to move America, you have to move American business. That American business was the one making the products, serving customer demand, using a vast amount of energy, creating pollution, and they were the intermediary between customers who wanted their needs served, needed housing, needed electricity, needed services, needed products, and that, dealing directly with them could be, in certain circumstances, a good way to get results. I mean, the circumstances I allude to, one is you have to have a company that's really committed, starting with the CEO. In the beginning, after we worked with McDonald's, we tried to do another partnership. We didn't have the buy-in from the CEO, and 6 months into the partnership, the CEO got a call from one of their disgruntled customers, and the partnership was ended in 2 hours. So we learned that having the buy-in from the CEO is critical. Having a company that genuinely wants to make big changes is a big difference than a company that is looking to greenwash itself, which is thankfully becoming increasingly untenable in this era of transparency.
Yeah, it's also become increasingly rare, I think, in terms of the number of companies that are, beating their proverbial chests and actually not doing anything or not doing what it tends to be understated in a lot of cases. But so where do you see, in terms of corporate America, CEOs or leadership, the readiness these days? Do you see that it's still a fairly small circle? Because you've been working with Walmart for a number of years, and I think FedEx, and there's a whole list, and I don't have it committed to memory, but a lot of big brands that have and companies that I think you've helped move the needle on. But is it those 10 or 20 or 30 companies that are at the readiness stage, or is it really much more broad now?
I think it's way more broad right now. The fact is that employees and customers, the general public is more and more concerned about these issues. The new polling data that's come out from Yale suggesting the majority of people are intensely concerned about climate change. The increased transparency that the internet has provided, the ubiquity of sensors, the fact that we can detect pollution at lower and lower quantities, all means many, many companies, I believe, genuinely want to do more. But it's very complex. Some companies start from the beginning. Some companies are more advanced in their journey, and they face a lot of obstacles. And we, who want to help them on their journey, have been time and time again figuring out how do we take what we've done in the past and help it get to bigger results sooner.
Yeah, the replication piece is a big challenge, and we can get to this, the Supply Chain Solutions Center that you just, I think, launched here this week at GreenBiz, that's aiming to do some of that. You've said that the most successful companies are those that can see over the horizon. I don't think anyone watching this would disagree with that. But you've seen over the horizon quite a bit in looking at how, McDonald's is one great example of that, looking at how to harness market forces in general to further environmental goals. How do you, where do you look, and how do you gain that kind of perspective?
Well, thanks. That's kind of you to say. I think there are certain trends that, you know, if you care about these issues deeply and study them, that just become apparent. And this one trend that I've already talked about, the fact that the world is demanding transparency and data is becoming more available, to me, that means companies are being incentivized to do more sooner. And it's, you mentioned Walmart. I can't think of a company on the planet that's done more bigger things. As we have worked with them to try to figure out what they can do that's bigger than what they've done, it starts first with greening their own operations, but then with looking at their supply chain. And their announcement a year now ago of Project Gigaton to get 1 billion tons out of their supply chain in terms of carbon dioxide emissions is huge, and it affects hundreds of companies around the world. You know, that's one example of taking something to scale and influencing a lot more companies. So in our own efforts, we've had Climate Corps, a great fellowship program, working one-on-one with companies, and just like with McDonald's, just like with Walmart, from working one-on-one to Project Gigaton, with Climate Corps, we're now, you know, we've created and are servicing a worldwide network of people interested in sustainability.
One of the things that I think sets you apart, at least from a lot of the other big green group leaders, is you're pretty much a techno-optimist. You see a lot of potential in the technologies of today and the technologies of tomorrow, I guess, to solve a lot of the problems that we've been trying, all of us have been trying to address for a long, long time. And the ultimate iteration of which, or expression of which, is this is the satellite that EDF, I guess, plans to launch or cause to be launched to measure methane emissions. Talk a little about where you see technology and how you come to that, and where you see that going, specifically as it relates to the companies and on their sustainability journeys.
Well, there's so many things that are obstacles to getting environmental progress. But one of the things that has emerged in the last few years that has wind at our backs is technology, both in terms of wind power, solar power, storage coming way down in price on the solution side, but also on this making things that have been invisible, pollution, visible side. And so in London, in West Oakland, in Houston, we've teamed up with Google and others to measure air pollution, and then with health insurers to correlate what air pollution is specifically in what neighborhoods.
And on a block-by-block basis.
On a block-by-block, on a foot-by-foot basis, with what are the health outcomes. And as people see that you're more likely to die of cardiac arrest if you live on a more polluted section of the street, I think it's going to revolutionize the demands to clean the air. So this has wind at our backs, the fact that data is becoming easier to collect and easier to distribute. The satellite is an example where many in the oil industry have made really encouraging promises that, you know, Saudi Aramco and Exxon and BP and Shell and the 13 of the biggest oil companies have promised to vastly reduce methane pollution from extracting oil and natural gas and from transporting it. This will make a big difference to global warming because 29% of the global warming we're experiencing now comes from natural gas escaping into the atmosphere. But as President Reagan said a long time ago, trust but verify. So EDF will construct and launch a satellite in 2021 that will monitor multiple times weekly all of the major oil and gas facilities around the world.
And where will that data go?
That data will be made open to the public and free. So it'll be mounted on the web and very accessible.
Who's paying for this? What does it cost?
It's going to cost about $65 million, of which, you know, we've raised close to $40 million so far. So we've got a ways to go. Contributions welcome, Joel.
Yeah, I think yeah. Operators are standing by. Yeah.
So it's people interested in climate change. I've never seen a better investment in terms of lowering the temperatures we'll see in the next 20 years than this one thing that will hold the oil companies accountable to dramatically reducing this powerful greenhouse gas.
Talking about holding companies accountable, one of the I think the growing consensus that we're seeing in this community, environmental community, is that companies need to be stepping up and speaking up on policy. That there's a lot of great leadership companies, your Walmarts and McDonald's, that are running their operations, their supply chains, working with their customers and communities, but they're still pretty silent on the kinds of policies that we all need to enable the big kinds of changes that are necessary. What do you see your role there and the role of EDF and beyond?
Well, I think that's exactly right. Getting your own house in order and committing to ambitious goals is step one. Step two is dealing with your supply chain, which has a much bigger impact than your own house. But the third thing that increasingly we and the public are demanding and have a right to demand is that companies will engage constructively for the ambitious policies we need to put a price on carbon, to get rid of toxic chemicals. We did pass the Chemical Safety Act a couple of years ago, overwhelmingly bipartisan, and many companies did step up. You know, to be fair, 10 years ago, we had US CAP, where many companies did step up and advocated for policy, and we're now at a similar stage where we need all stakeholders, environmental justice groups, labor unions, companies, citizens groups, to engage now, because in the next couple of years, we're going to have a chance to make national climate policy, probably after the next election, and we have a new president in the White House, but the time to...
Cheap applause line in this conference.
The time to start working on that and engaging, if you're a company and you want to help bring about a new future and a level playing field, that time is now.
Well, I'm kind of hoping that the guy whose organization used to be Sue the Bastards would be a little bit more forceful in terms of in terms of transparency, particularly of shining a light on the companies that aren't doing these things, and maybe those that are, Is that part of, do you see that as part of your mandate, or are you working in consort with others?
Well, absolutely. I think the public is going to see which companies are engaging and which aren't. But, it starts with Tom Linebarger at Cummins has done a great job advocating for better air pollution rules here in the United States and abroad, and developing new engines to clean the air. Unilever, Mars, Dannon, there are a host of companies that are engaging for 34 companies wrote a letter to the sponsors of the Republican carbon tax bill, public letter praising them. So, companies are beginning to engage, and as we get into this effort, absolutely we will help point out and applaud those who are engaging in a constructive way, and put a spotlight on those that are opposing efforts. And it's probably not good enough to stand on the sidelines.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's that big chunk in the middle that also need to get off the sidelines. Heather, let's take a question.
Great conversation. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. The question builds on the theme you were just discussing. What will it take? What will it really take to build stronger trust between the business world and the general public, the consumers out there in the world?
To me, the fact that the world is becoming more transparent, what it's going to take is actual actions that improve performance. So the oil companies are going to have to show that they're bringing their levels of pollution down. The companies that make diesel engines are going to have to show they're bringing pollution down. The companies that put toxic chemicals in our products are going to have to start removing them. So actions speak louder than public relations spin, and it's going to take actions, because we're moving into a world where it's now much easier to find out what performance is.
Yeah. Well, we are dangerously close to out of time, but you recently became a grandfather. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
How does that, if at all, change your perspective, your sense of what you do?
Well, I think, I now have a granddaughter born 8 months ago, and a grandson born just last month. And first of all, it's everything it's cracked up to be. It's a lot of fun to be a grandparent. But second of all, it definitely adds, yet in my case, 2 more reasons, why this work is so important and so gratifying. And the fact that all of us in this room are engaged in something that has the potential to leave the world better for everyone's grandchildren. I just can't imagine any other way to spend my daytimes that is more meaningful and filled with purpose. And I know, many people sitting here doing the same thing in their own ways feel the same way. So I thank them, and I thank you, Joel, for bringing all of us together.
Yeah, I think you just kind of told the story of this profession. To a lot of us look at that and get that this is, it's about us, yeah, but it's about a lot of other people that none of us have yet met.
Joel, I do want to say, since you brought up EDF's unofficial founding model of Sue the Bastards, that it's been 20 years since we changed that to finding the ways that work.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you did, and you clearly have found a lot of ways that work, and I thank you for that. Please join me in thanking Fred Krupp.